everyone. I'm Kathy Powers, Superintendent with the Twinsburg City School District. Welcome to Twinsburg Schools today. Well, I hope your fall is off to a great start. It is so beautiful out, and we're delighted that we're seeing the changing of the trees, and we're in the midst of another terrific school year. Today's show is pretty important because today we have three guests. We have our treasurer, Mr. Martin Aho, who will be on our first segment, and then you're going to be able to meet for the first time Eric Brunton, our transportation supervisor, and Tracy Abbott, the assistant transportation supervisor, and they're going to give us an overview on all the things you want to know about our fleet and what it takes to transport our Tigers every single day of the school year. So before we get to our transportation piece, I want to introduce Marty Aho. Welcome to our show.
Well, thank you for having me on today's episode.
Absolutely. You know, so much goes into your work, Marty, in the school district, and you're managing a huge budget on behalf of our Board of Education. What is that dollar amount for the school budget?
We're about $42 million right now in the general operating fund. We do have some other smaller funds and some federal funds that we receive. But in general, it's the $42 million that operates the school district. You
know, when you think about a school district, you think about students in their classrooms, and you think about teachers teaching at the front of a classroom, but really a $42 million budget, there's a lot of moving parts and pieces to making sure that we're good stewards of those dollars.
Yeah, exactly, and that, you know, goes to, you know, we're a service organization, so, you know, all those dollars, you know, mostly go for paying for staff and for teachers. Mm-hmm. So it is a big project.
Well, today's program, you're going to talk a little bit about our financial picture and provide some insight to our community members about the many pieces and parts that go into our budget.
Correct. So here on our PowerPoint that we have today, we have our welcome, just kind of like hello kind of thing. Let me get that over there. On the first slide, one of the things that we're pretty proud of is that we've been able to hold down our per pupil expenditures. We feel that we get a good bang for our buck. Twinsburg is $10,645 per student. In the state average, and that's below state average in similar districts and below many of our neighboring districts. So that's something that I think we've done a great job at, keeping the costs down.
And this is in the first year. We're typically below our neighbors as far as per pupil expenditures go.
Yeah, this has been, you know, an ongoing thing. Here's another thing. You see, people always, you know, look at, you know, well, how come schools, you know, or you know, spend what you spend? One of the things that we wanted everybody to notice was that back in 2007, we were receiving like about $42 million, and last year we received about $42 million. From 2007 to 2016, our revenue's been pretty flat, so we live within our budget.
That's a huge statement to make, and we know even in our home budgets how we have to keep up with the cost of living and such, but what you're saying is our revenue stream hasn't changed in so many years.
Right, yeah, it's been pretty static, pretty flat. One of the things that we, you know, get questions about is, you know, how come, you know, it is that way? A lot of what happens for schools is not in our local control. The state legislature has limited the growth from revenues. And that's called a House Bill 920, and it caps the amount of revenue that we receive from levies. And then also, too, in recent history is the elimination of the TPP CAT tax subsidy under House Bill 66. And this is where the state of Ohio has eliminated the tangible personal property tax, and you've heard the board talk about this many times. They substituted a CAT tax, a commercial activity tax, and now they're phasing that out. One time that was, you can see here, one time it was $9.8 million back in 2004-2005 timeframe. There's the green part where it's the elimination of the tangible personal property, and the CAT tax kind of backfilling that. Well, it's down to $6.2 million, and that's a loss of $3.6 million over time. You know, some of the things that's interesting here is that as these dollars are phased out, you know, the total thing is, when this is all going to be said and done, that the total cumulative amount is $57.8 million in 13 years that the school district is not receiving. Basically, where's this money going to? Well, the state of Ohio is keeping it. You know, and that's another thing that you know, the legislature can do really what they want to do with a lot of things, and the school district is basically the recipient of the legislative trends.
So, and you're not hearing, and neither am I, that there's going to be anything to backfill those dollars. Once they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah, once they're gone, they're gone. That's unfortunate. Another thing is, it makes it difficult too, is since 2010, the state has come out with 4 different funding models. There was the SF3, then there was the PASS, then there's the bridge, and there's the current SFPR. And also too, in this time frame, there's been several different iterations of the tangible personal property phase-out calculations. So this makes it difficult really to plan ahead as they're changing things on us like every 2 years. You know, there again, there's House Bill 920, which caps the amount of revenues the district receives. One of the things that's interesting was back in 1985, the district had 39 operating mills, and because of House Bill 920, today we have 36 effective mills, and that's with 7 levies instead of the 3 levies that we had back in 1985. So we've had to pass levies just to stay even on the millage piece. And then the casino revenue, you know, that was, you know, maybe a windfall, but not really. Last year we received just a little over $200,000, which is welcome. Take, you know, any kind of help we can get, but it's not any big windfall, you know, that the district is receiving.
We hear that a lot in the media, talk about the casinos and talk about the lottery and how that's all going to go to public schools, but it's really a small amount of money based on the bigger picture.
Yeah, the casino revenue is very small, and the lottery money was just basically a displacing money, a supplanting, so that the money that was already there was supplanted. So we don't receive any more money, it just comes from a different flow. So that's what they did with the lottery money. They said, well, all that money goes to schools, which it does, but then they reduced the amount of general fund money that they were supplying on the other end. So then the total amount is the same.
Now, just before you move on, Marty, you talked a little bit about the TPP, or tangible personal property tax, and knowing that both of us have advocated on behalf of the district, as has members of the Board of Education with our legislators, but with the next budget soon to be a conversation in Columbus, we're not predicting that there's going to be any relief with regard to that.
Yeah, there really doesn't look like the legislatures are, you know, going to do anything to benefit the school districts on that aspect.
And then when we were looking at creating our financial flow chart, which was a board goal last year, I think we saw that in 2023, whether it's considered TPP or the CAT tax, that's totally going to be eliminated from the budget. Yeah,
that's the way the current legislation is that money completely goes away, which there again, you know, when it was originally passed, we were receiving $9.8 million. Mm-hmm. Well, that $9.8 million every year is now gone.
It's a huge, big hole to fill now.
Right. This is one of the things with the state funding. I know this is hard to read, but the main point there is, you know, when the state does their calculation on their funding model, Twinsburg should receive $9.2 million. Well, here's the actual, what they do send us because of caps and because of all these different changes in the funding models. They only send Twinsburg $4.9 million. So that's because of the caps. There's $4.3 million that we don't receive, and this is all these funding models and all these changes that they do. So it's just something that's interesting and needs attention.
Are many school districts capped?
There's a good number that are capped, and then on the other side there's some that are guaranteed, so it's just all over the place, and that's what happens when they keep changing these funding models. Is, you know, one size doesn't fit all, so that they keep changing things and making all different kind of rules, and you know, it really gets confusing.
Makes a very difficult task for you to stay on top of that.
Yes. One of the things is we, you know, do our 5-year forecast, which we need to do every year. You know, we look out in the future, and it's a snapshot of what we do today, and we're looking toward the future. You know, and this is the same for every school district. You know, the revenues and expenditures will switch, and expenditures will exceed revenues. And your fund balance then will approach, you know, going negative. And our job really is to look at that. Where can we make adjustments in this 5-year forecast? You know, can we cut expenses? Can we do something with revenues? You know, so we look at that, and we keep wanting to push that line out further and further. And that's really what our charge is just to keep the district in the red. They're not in the red. And here's one of the things that we have too is our levy cycle coming up. We have several levies that are continuing levies at the bottom of our slide. We have also a debt service for the high school and a permanent improvement levy. But on the top, the green levies, we have two emergency levies and one general operating levy. And those are up for renewal. There's the general operating is in 2017 for renewal, 2018 for the emergency levy, and 2020 for the other emergency levy. And one thing that's kind of a misnomer on these levies, when they call them emergency levies, they're not really. Really what they are is they're a fixed sum levy. Those levies are passed for a dollar amount. The general operating levy is passed on a millage amount. So it's just kind of terminology, and it's how those, the emergency levies are always renewable. Whereas the general operating levy can be a renewal or can be continuing. There's a choice there. So that's one thing to note. That emergency levy doesn't mean that there's a huge emergency. It just means it's a more of a fixed dollar type of levy.
And these levies that are up for renewal, this isn't the first time they've been up for renewal.
No, they've been several times. You can see in the yellow there, when those levies were first put on, they've been up for renewal several times. One thing in Twinsburg is the voters have been very receptive and passing the renewals, which has been very fortunate for the school district.
Now, Marty, with regard to the renewals of these levies, we just talked about tangible personal property tax, or the CAT tax, being eliminated in 2023. If we were to pass all three of those renewals, is that enough as far as the operating expenses go to maintain our programming today?
We're probably going to need something else to get us through this time. We're losing money, so we need to really backfill that hole. So, we're going to need to do something in the future. Which is probably another levy of some sort, possibly. Looking to that, because that is, as a result of the lost tangible or CAT tax. Mm-hmm. That really does leave a large deficit on our budget. And if people remember, we did the operational change plan several years ago. We did, cut some staff and do some of those cuts. We're able to get through that fairly well. But if we have to go looking for more cuts, it's really going to start cutting into programming and things that are probably more impactful on student learning. That's kind of the gist of it. One of the things, like I said, as we look forward, and we're always, like the Garmin always does when I drive off make a left-hand turn somewhere, it recalculates, and that's what we have to do all the time. We always take in the information that we're given, and then we recalculate, and we try to keep the school district on the path to get us where we're going.
And there are so many things that happen to us as far as the budget goes that would be out of our control. Federal dollars, this whole thing with regard to TBP or the CAT tax. So we take the information that we have and we make good choices based on what we know. Correct,
yeah. Because they're always, the legislature's constantly coming up with different rules and different programs that draw money away from schools. They haven't been favorable as far as giving schools money, but they've been finding ways to reduce what we receive.
Right. And at this point of the school year, what we're going to be doing is engaging our community members in some conversations about the financial picture of the school district. And soon we'll be talking about our focus groups, and there are actually a number of focus groups planned for our community members in the month of October. We have one scheduled for Monday, October 10th, and that will be at 9:30 a.m. at the Twinsburg Public Library. A second one on Wednesday, October 26th, and that will be at Samuel Bissell Elementary School at 6:30 in the evening. And the last one is on October 27th. It's a Thursday evening, and that'll be at R.B. Chamberlain Middle School at 6:30. And we invite residents of our community to come out and have a conversation with us about the financial picture of our school district. And our Board of Education is very interested in the feedback that we can collect so that they make some good decisions moving forward.
Correct.
Well, thanks for your time today, Marty. It's always a pleasure talking numbers with you, and I appreciate all that you do for our school district and making sure that we have the very best programs available based on our budget.
Great. You're welcome.
And when we return, we're going to have our Transportation Department Supervisor and Assistant Supervisor, Mr. Eric Brunton and Ms. Tracy Abbott, here for a conversation about our yellow school buses and all that it takes to transport our Tigers. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Twinsburg Schools Today, everyone. I am so glad that you're joining us for our October show. You just heard a financial overview from Martin A. our treasurer of our school district, and now I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Eric Brunton and Ms. Tracy Abbott from our transportation department. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Now, Eric and Tracy, you're both now, I think, in year 2 in your positions. And as transportation supervisor and as assistant supervisor, what's the very best thing about your jobs?
Best thing about our job, from my vantage point, is the fact that we're so lucky that our students start their day and finish their day with us. And I think we do a spot-on job of doing that. In addition to that, we get to enhance the athletic and the musical athletic trips and field trips for them. And so from my standpoint, that's the best part.
That's awesome. What about you, Tracy?
Best part of my job is the people. I grew up in Twinsburg. I live in Twinsburg now. This is my home. And getting to work in the schools and transport students that are my neighbors' kids is wonderful.
You know, there's so little known about our transportation department. When we talk about schools, we mostly talk about classrooms and teachers and kids learning, but there's such great importance about our transportation department. That's why I wanted to highlight that a little bit on our show today. And how many buses do we have in our fleet, and how many bus drivers are employed in our department?
Well, we have, thank you, we have 39 school buses and 3 vans. We have 55 employees. 45 of them are drivers. We have 5 bus aides. We have 3 mechanics and 3 office staff members. And we drive every day 36 routes. That means every day 36 individuals are out there driving a bus or a van. And within those 36 routes, there's 110 morning and afternoon runs. Some of our drivers have 3 responsibilities in morning and afternoon, some have 4. So that's over 220 runs every single day to transport close to 3,000 students every single day.
That's remarkable. How do you keep it all straight?
Well, that's what I have Tracy for.
Now, we use a computer system, a new one, well, relatively new for us.
Yeah, currently we use Edgelog is our routing software, but we're always looking at, tweaking our routes.
So the routing software, you put the street names in and you put where the students live, and it sort of hocus pocus does it itself, or is there some adjustments that have to go on?
Unfortunately, there's a lot of adjustments that go on. With our Edgelog system, we actually have to create the mapping in the software ourselves, so we're actually building rows as our new developments are coming in, our new families are moving into the district. And from there, when a student comes in, you assign them to a stop. If the stop's not within our guidelines, then we actually have to create stops for students.
So you have to do a lot of hand manipulation then.
Yes.
It's not just dependent on what a computer program's telling you.
If we went by that, probably our routes and our students would never get to school.
Oh.
And of course, as you all know, over the last 5 and 10 years, how many new developments have come into
Yes.
Twinsburg? A lot.
And more seem to be coming on board here.
Yep. So that creates a bit of a challenge.
Right. Now, driving a school bus is not like driving a car. You have to know so many more rules, and keeping our students safe is of paramount importance to the drivers. How do you train to become a bus driver?
Well, the hard challenge to become a bus driver is if you want to be a sub mechanic or a sub teacher, you sign up, you come in, you go to work. But training to become a driver can take upwards of a month and a half to 2 months or more to do so. Tracy, talk about that a little bit.
New drivers coming to our schools go out with one of our onboard instructors. We have 3 onboard instructors that work for our district. They'll go out with the driver will train them, proper pickup and drop-off procedures, maneuverability, and a pre-trip. From there, they'll go to a pre-service class with the Ohio Department of Education. They have to pass that class. Then they have to actually go to the Highway Patrol and test with the Highway Patrol, and then they actually go back out with our drivers as well, and our onboard instructors test them to make sure they are prepared and ready to transport our students.
And this training can take up to 30 or 40 hours.
Wow.
And some people say, wow, that long? I said, well, think about showing up to work on Monday morning at 8 o'clock, you've never driven a bus. And by Friday at 4 o'clock, you're a bus driver.
That's amazing. And we just want to make sure that we have the very best drivers driving our students back and forth into all of our events and such.
Yep.
Now, what about our buses? I know that much like the bus drivers are vetted through this process to make sure that they have the best skills, we annually need to make sure that our school buses are very safe. So how do we make sure of that?
Well, a couple things. Over the last 3 years, we have purchased 15 buses, so our fleet is much newer. And we're on a rotation cycle of buying 3 buses 1 year and 4 buses another year. And our average lifespan is about 9 or 10 years on a bus. And all of our buses and vans go through over 100-point annual inspection every year, as well as 3 spot inspections every year. And we have 100% satisfaction every time.
That's awesome. It's really one of those little known things that happen here that really make a big difference.
They sure do.
Because through those inspections, we know that the buses are safe to roll any day of the school year, and that our students will come here and there and do so safely.
Yep, and our mechanics have done just a great job with that.
Now we have 3 mechanics.
Yep.
Yes.
And they do a great job with a fleet as large as that.
They sure do. They sure do. And this past winter time, knock on wood, as you well know, every school bus started every single day. We didn't have any delays because the school bus is not running.
Why don't you tell the residents a little bit, Eric, about how we get those buses started on those frigid mornings in the wintertime?
Well, our mechanics, all 3 of them show up a little bit early.
A little bit early,
Yeah, well, they show up about 5 o'clock, sometimes quarter to 5.
Right.
And they get the buses started. And so when the bus drivers roll in, I mean, anywhere between 5:30, quarter to 6 o'clock, they're ready to go.
Right. And they're all warmed up and ready for our kids.
Yep.
So if I am a student in our school district, I might assume I know how to ride a bus safely, but we don't take any assumptions here when it comes to safety. So what are some of the programs that we have in place or things that we have on the bus to make sure our kids are safe?
Tracy?
Each bus actually has the rules. If the students look towards the front of the bus, they'll see the bus rules that tell them how to sit properly. There's no eating or drinking on the bus. And additionally, with our Wilcox and our Bissell students, we do bus safety classes. We actually have them going on, we had them going on in September, where bus drivers go out with 4 or 5 buses and actually teach the students how to properly cross, evacuations, how to sit properly, and they always say seat to seat, back to back, with backpacks on their laps. And then they teach them, what to be quiet at railroad tracks as well.
In addition to that, all of our buses have 3 cameras on there.
Right, and that's a new addition, maybe a year ago now?
Yes, yes.
Right, so if there were a problem on the bus, if we had an issue with maybe a naughty child, the administrative team can pull the cameras and determine exactly what happened on the buses.
Exactly, and it's really for the protection of the students and the drivers.
Right, right. Now, when we're teaching the kids how to evacuate a bus, that's pretty technical and maybe a little scary for the little ones. How is that done with, say, Wilcox, maybe our kindergarten children?
There's 3 different evacuations they perform. There's a front door, a rear door, and a split. With the front door, we do have drivers standing outside, and telling them to go to a place of safety. They designate a tree or something of that nature when they do it at the schools. And then with the back door evacuation, the biggest thing is making sure that students sit before they don't jump out the back of the door.
Have to do it the right way. We hope we never have to use them. It's much like the crisis drills that we have at our schools, just to make sure that our students know how to evacuate safely.
Exactly, yep.
Right. So with regard to our bus routes, we have all the students that we transport during the school day, but then the second shift starts after school hours. Talk to us a little bit about the field trips and the athletic events and places that our kids go on our yellow buses.
Wow, I'll start and you take it over from there.
All right.
On any given day, we could have 3 or 4 or 5 trips. Weekends, we could have 8, 9, 10, 12 trips going on.
Wow.
And they leave any time from 1:45 in the afternoon to 7 o'clock at night, depending on what sport it happens to be.
Right.
And additionally, we've actually taken buses with students as far as Kentucky. For basketball, we go to Indiana for show choir. We go long distances on our buses with our drivers.
Is there some limit to say, okay, that's too far for a yellow bus to travel?
State of Ohio says that it's 1,000 miles round trip.
And that's it?
That's a little long.
Yeah, it is a long time.
Yeah.
And I know some of our high school groups, say the show choir Great Expectations, they tend to travel a lot. And so when they go outside the state, then that's when the group would potentially take a charter bus.
Sure.
Right.
The being able to provide transportation for extracurriculars is a huge benefit.
Yeah.
And Twinsburg is very lucky to be able to do that.
Right, right. Well, our buses always look so sharp, and the drivers are always so very courteous. Eric, you said something at the beginning of our segment, and that's, you're proud of the fact that our drivers are the first employees to see the students in the morning and the last ones to see the students get off the buses. And it's all about how you start and end your day, isn't it?
It is. And they're a great help, because sometimes a student could be having a rough start today.
Right.
And they'll come in and say, hey, Johnny Doe here is having a rough start. And we'll call over to the school and say, hey, just giving you a heads up that John Doe's having some problems this morning. Oh, thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Right. I think the skills the students learn from our bus drivers are lifelong skills. They don't forget about them when they graduate from the high school, about being safe on the road and paying attention when you're crossing the street and all those things too. So when we have these great drivers that work for us, they're our ambassadors, because they really are the first employees to see kids or their families in the morning and the last ones to say, have a great night. Beyond the training that they get when they're first employed with us, are there other trainings that they have to have annually to upgrade their certificate or their license?
Yeah, we provide in-service all year long. Tracy, you want to talk about how many hours it is?
In services, normally we actually have 4 hours at each in service. In addition to classroom time, where we're talking about pupil management, we also have, they go out and drive their routes as well. To practice their routes and practice their skills.
And so we provide in-service on a lot of topics. Classroom management, as you said, invaders, people trying to invade on the bus, special education.
Managing students with challenges sometimes.
Exactly, yep.
Right. Now, we're going to be getting into the snowy season here shortly, I would think, and we really rely on our parents to help with some information to their children. So if you had a bit of advice you can offer moms or dads or guardians of our tigers about behavior on the bus, now that we're getting into the winter months, what kinds of bits of advice can we offer them?
Well, number one is to be at your stop 5 minutes early in the morning. And 2, be in your safe spot. I know sometimes there's snow on the ground and the ground is icy. They want to get closer to the street, but these buses are big. They're big sleds. You need to stay in your safe spot until that bus stops, the door opens up, and the driver says, come on aboard. Trace?
That's great advice.
And then when you board the bus, don't switch seats. Make sure you stay remaining in your seat. Don't get up to put something in the trash can. The driver needs to keep their eyes on the road, especially when the roads become slick during the wintertime.
And I used to tell my students when I was a building principal to use your inside voices when you're on the school bus, because just imagine you have a busload of children. How many children can fit on a bus?
Anywhere between 55 to 72.
On the bigger buses.
On the bigger buses, yeah.
So imagine driving a bus, a heavy vehicle with all these children that you're in charge of their care, traffic happening, bad weather potentially. So
it's dark outside.
Yeah, so we really have to make sure that our students do their part and behave the right way while they're riding on our school buses.
Exactly.
So if we have parents that have questions, maybe they've have a question about a route, who should they call? How should they get a hold of you?
Best way is email. If they call us, we'll of course field a call, talk them through it, and ask them for an email as well.
Great. Good to have that documented.
Yes.
Right. And I know that we're always looking for exceptional bus drivers, especially our substitutes. How can an individual who may be watching our show today who has an interest in becoming a substitute bus driver or a bus attendant, how can they get connected with the school district?
They go online to the school website, and they have a device called AppleTrack. They apply an AppleTrack. It's routed right to us. We print it out. We make the phone calls.
So that would be found under the Human Resources link off of the website?
Correct.
Right. Any final thoughts about transportation as we close today's show?
We do a spot-on job. When I say we transport close to 3,000 students a day, if we're 99.5% on, that means we're not doing something right for 15 kids, and we're not messing up 15 times a day. So we're 99.75 to 100% every single day, which is a pretty good track record. We're not perfect, never will be, but we try our best.
Right, and it's just amazing how many students that are in your care every single day, get them to school, get them home from school safely, and that's what it's all about.
It sure is.
Well, I sure do appreciate all of your efforts at transportation, and now our community sees a face with a name, and I'm sure they'll be able to call you if they have questions about transportation, routes, anything as such.
Please do. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time today. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks.
As we close today's show, just a reminder to please check our website for all of the best information you can. It's updated daily on the Twinsburg City School website. It's always a pleasure being a member of our school district and coming into your homes on Twinsburg Schools Today. Have a great day, everyone. I hope to see you soon at one of our school events. Goodbye.